Let me tell you a story about distance, not the kind measured in miles, but in hearts. It begins with two old suitcases and a dream to see family again. And it ends with silence and a single teacup sitting untouched. In the quiet town of Onomichi, where the sea breathes against wooden docks and the air smells of salt and cedar, an elderly woman kneels on a tatami mat. Her name is Tomi. Her fingers tremble as she folds a scarf neatly, as if it carries her whole life within its fabric. Beside her, her husband, Shukichi, packs a small suitcase. Every motion is deliberate, the careful rhythm of a man who has spent his years teaching, raising children, following routine. Today, though, the routine is broken. They're leaving their little seaside home to visit Tokyo, to see their grown children after years apart. They say goodbye to their youngest, Kyoko, who still lives with them. Her voice catches as she waves at the station platform. The train whistles, and the old couple disappears into the distance, into a new world. Tokyo, 1953. The city hums like a living thing. Trains, traffic, neon lights, ambition. To Tomi and Shukichi, it feels like another planet. They arrive at the home of their eldest son, Koichi, a pediatrician. His wife greets them politely, offers tea, and rushes back to chores. The house is cramped, full of noise, but not warmth. Koichi tries to make time for them, but between patience and obligations, the moments are fleeting. Their grandsons are polite but distracted, eyes glued to comic books. Tomi smiles through it all, trying not to be a burden, but when she glances at the clock on the wall, she notices her grandson doing the same, waiting for the evening to end. Their next stop is their daughter Shige, who runs a busy beauty salon. Her smile is wide, her words loud, but underneath, there's impatience. She scolds them gently. You should have written before coming. Her apartment is full of chatter and hairspray, a blur of customers and chaos. That night, Tomi and Shukichi sleep on thin futons in a corner, the city buzzing just outside the window. They stare at the ceiling in silence, both thinking the same thing. Their children have changed, and so has the world. And then, in the midst of all that noise, they meet Noriko, the widow of their son Shoji, who died in the war. She lives alone in a tiny Tokyo flat. Nothing fancy, one table, one kettle, and a quiet kind of peace. When Tomi and Shukichi visit her, the air shifts. Noriko greets them with a smile that feels real, soft, humble, full of respect. She pours tea, listens to their stories, asks about the sea back home. Tomi, moved by her warmth, says, "You're too kind to us." Noriko blushes, brushes it off, but her eyes glisten. That evening, they talk for hours. Not about work or money, but about life, loss, and the small things that make loneliness bearable. For the first time in Tokyo, they feel seen. But kindness can't stop time. Koichi and Shige, feeling guilty yet inconvenienced, decide to send their parents on a short trip to Atami, a resort town. They'll say, it'll be good for them. Atami is loud, filled with tourists and jazz music, young people laughing by the sea. Tomi and Shukichi sit quietly on the balcony, side by side, watching the waves in silence. They don't belong here. Tomi coughs again, a dry, hollow sound she hides behind her sleeve. Shukichi notices. He doesn't say a word, When they return, they overhear Shige whispering to Koichi, "They're in the way." Tomi hears it too. She doesn't flinch, just lowers her gaze and smiles faintly, pretending she didn't. Days later, Noriko invites them to stay again. She insists. Her home is small, but her heart is wide. She cooks, they talk, they laugh, but Tomi is weaker now. Her steps slow, her hands tremble. When it's time to go back to Onomichi, she smiles faintly and says, "It's time to return home." On the train ride back, the wind hums through the window cracks. And then suddenly, Tomi collapses. Her husband shouts her name. The world blurs. They rush her to a rural hospital near Onomichi. For days, she drifts between sleep and silence. The children gather: Koichi, Shige, Keizo, Kyoko. Their faces pale, their guilt heavy. Tomi opens her eyes one last time. Her lips move. "I'm ready." Shukichi grips her hand, whispering, "You've been a good wife." She smiles, and then she's gone. The funeral is simple. Neighbors chant softly. The sky is gray. Koichi and Shige leave early, citing work. Keizo lingers for a moment, says little, and boards his train. Kyoko, furious, turns to Noriko. They didn't care enough. Noriko shakes her head gently. It's just how life is. Everyone gets busy. We can't help it. After everyone leaves, Shukichi sits alone in their empty home. The house feels too big, too quiet. He finds Tomi's sewing box untouched and stares at it until his eyes blur. There's nothing left to fix, nothing left to do. Noriko visits one last time. She brings a small gift, a watch that Tomi loved. Shukichi offers it back to her softly, saying, "You were her daughter too." Noriko finally breaks down, tears falling freely. She admits she's been living like a shadow since Shoji's death, afraid to move on. Shukichi nods, voice steady. "Don't stay lonely forever. You must live." She leaves with tears in her eyes, but something inside her begins to heal. Later that evening, Kyoko sits beside her father on the porch. The sun sets over Onomichi's harbor, the waves glimmering like memories. She whispers, "Life is disappointing, isn't it?" Shukichi exhales slowly. "Yes," he says, "but we go on." Days pass. The cicadas hum. Shukichi drinks his tea alone. In Tokyo, Noriko walks to work, the wind brushing her face. For the first time in years, she smiles, faintly, but real. And somewhere in between them, life continues, quiet, steady, beautiful in its imperfections. Because that's what Tokyo Story really is. Not a story about aging or family alone, but about how love changes shape, how it survives even after the words stop, how it lingers, like the sea breeze of Onomichi, gentle, endless, and unforgettable.